I believe we are live, Jim.
You sound live. I'm Jim Hanson. If you don't know what I do, look me up. I'm easy to find. James Middlebrook, who I'm pointing to my computer screen over there, but actually, if I go like that, hey,
Still there.
That's the click. That's James Middlebrook. He works for America Matters, which is an outstanding organization, and he is the director of something or other. What do you do?
Operations.
Right
Just
on.
the
Stuff.
everything.
Right on. And look, we managed to get the stream live. I don't know if you were here yesterday, but yesterday, right about this time, I was angry because the stream wasn't working. And I knocked over a 16-ounce amino energy drink, grape, all over the floor. I have another one. And I'm not going to knock it over today. We're going to avoid that. I'm going to save it for hydration purposes. But hey, welcome. We're getting a little better at this. And the game is to work out a way to have a show we can do regularly, semi-regularly. I don't know if it'll be daily, but at least 2-3 times a week, regularly scheduled, so people will know, and so people can come, show up. And if you're in one of the social media feeds, this is live on Twitter, this is live on Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn next week. And if you're at any of those sites and you've got a question, there is a chat. And hopefully, in the near future, we'll be adding more folks to go ahead and come on and chat, because we can bring in, it's got the Zoom-like capability. It's got a studio where we can bring in guests and have more people talk. But for now, you're stuck with me and Middlebrook, and that's good because we got a lot of stuff to talk about. So one of the first things I wanted to talk about today, James, was the Senate's holding hearings on the Capitol riots, which I'm sure you will agree with me were the greatest tragedy in the history of the Republic. They were a combination of domestic terrorism, coup, insurrection, sedition, vandalism. What am I missing? Grand Theft Auto?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just missed the number one word that they're throwing out there: traitors. Every single person that showed up.
And that seems unfair, given that the vast majority of those people probably didn't even commit any crimes. If you're looking at a crowd of 50-some thousand and maybe 500 even entered the building, and at one point the Capitol Police just stood aside and let anybody in. So for a building that's generally a public building, I'm not sure that's even a crime once they go ahead and say, meh, whatever.
Well, Jim, what's interesting is, I only live a few blocks down from the Capitol. And so that day I just decided to walk up there. I was going to just see what's up, get some footage and stuff. And maybe I would say about 20,000 people on the east side of the Capitol where I was. And I left before anybody went into the Capitol. And I was just walking around, hearing people talk, getting a feel for what was on the ground. And I tell you, what you see on TV was not the same scene outside. So to condemn everyone that was there was not the experience that I saw with my own eyes.
I didn't know you were an actual insurrectionist, dude. That's kind of cool. Are you going to add that to your resume now?
Yeah.
It goes on your CV. I was a January 6th insurrectionist.
So you're going to call next week.
Well, here's the thing. One of the things we found out this week was that the FBI did a data drop on all kinds of cell phones without a warrant. Wow. So they basically invoked some emergency powers and some trickeration and dumped a whole bunch of people, including a bunch of Congress critters and anybody they determined was near. And now they, in some cases, were even reading text messages without any kind of legitimate warrant. And to say they've got probable cause, yeah, kind of, but not the kind of probable cause I want, for the federal government to go ahead and just start scarfing up everyone's cell phone data. And aside from even the data, the location data, using their ability to get inside those and read texts and everything, that's pretty much a bridge too far for me.
Dangerous slope.
Yeah. And I mean, and they're like, oh, but it's such a, unprecedented event. Well, not really. I mean, there've been plenty of times where maybe that, first of all, if you go back to times the Capitol was overtaken, Occupy Wall Street overtook the Capitol, and my wife, your boss, Samantha Niro, was working there. She was working for a congressman as a military liaison, and Occupy Wall Street came storming into their buildings And she literally held the line against those dirty, unwashed, nasty, patchouli smelling hippies as they stormed their way through and took over a bunch of Congress offices. All right, that happened. Then during confirmation hearings for Judge Kavanaugh, they did it again. They took over the entire Senate rotunda. They ran into a bunch of offices. They had hundreds and hundreds of chanting, hat-wearing weasels all over the place, taking over in a violent way, maybe not as violent as the Capitol, let's be clear, so the people who are beating people, they're out, all right? They're not considered part of what I'm talking about. But like you said, the bulk of the people at the Capitol that day were waving flags and signs and chanting and asking the government for redress of their grievances.
And if
that's in the book.
If our principles end, our principles end at when there's a massive event or something like that, how strong are our principles? Then what are they even for at that point?
Yeah, I think they wrote again in that dusty old parchment that nobody reads anymore. There's a number, I think it's number 4. They talk about unreasonable search and seizure and the idea that you have to have a warrant if you're going to search someone's private stuff. And okay, let's talk about whether, first of all, as long as the Chinese, the NSA, Google, and everybody else are looking at our cell phone stuff, privacy is kind of a joke, but not when it comes to the government doing it. It's one thing for us to go ahead and let all of our data be mined and sold and all of that, like we all do, like we're doing right now, because everybody who's connected to this is being tarred as someone here. So you should probably log off right now before the black helicopters come to your house. Or what we can start doing is standing up to these people. And that's the deep state. That's the permanent bureaucracy. That's the Biden administration. That's the left. That's the woke mob. That's the entire horde of people who think they know better than us how we should act and want to run our lives for us. And guess what? We're not going to put up with it. All right. However many of us do this is going to be the ones who, first of all, take the brunt of it. But second of all, probably save the republic for everybody. And I think if you're here, you're probably one of those kind of people. So just keep that in mind. You are a trailblazer. You are a son or daughter of liberty. You are part of the counterattack against all this. Let's go back, though, to the hearings today. And there was some interesting info. The Capitol Police chief quit right after this. He actually did one of those legitimate resigned in disgrace things, and good on him, because they failed. Whatever bad was done by the people who did bad, illegal, awful things, and the very small number of people who had an insurrectionist mindset and who were doing that kind of stuff, they were there. Let's not pretend they weren't there. But he was testifying today, and he said that they came prepared for war. Come on, man. You were there. Did you see any tanks?
Saw no tanks. Saw just a lot of flags, man. It's just
flags. Wow. I get, now let's be clear. A flag is a weapon of war. And, the colors kid was always the one front of the charge when they were charging up, any place they were running.
Instead of a drummer boy, I did hear Twisted Sister's "We're Not Gonna Take It" on blast over and over again. That was pretty funny.
Which is good, and Dee Snider, the lead singer for Twisted Sister, he's been to Capitol Hill before. When back in the day, he testified in front of a hearing spawned by Al Gore's wife, Tipper, when they were trying to ban music for being too offensive. So this cancel culture goes back to I think that was early 90s, maybe 80s, late 80s, early 90s. They had hearings on Capitol Hill where Dee Snider and Frank Zappa and a bunch of other people testified at Capitol Hill because Tipper Gore and her band of uptight housewives and others, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I was looking for a better derogatory term for her. That's what I came up with. Nothing against housewives. Wiving houses is a great thing. But they spawned this hearings about putting labels on records that had offensive lyrics. Yeah, and it was going to destroy the youth. And I don't know, dude. I'm pretty sure you look a little messy. I'm not sure.
I ended up
the byproduct.
there's a direct correlation between Dee Snider's making his music in the 80s and January 6th.
Direct line. There is a direct line. He was an instigator, and good on him. So I think that's great, and that's part of the reason, that I think it's awesome that he's doing that.
Yeah.
But they weren't prepared for war. And dude, the one thing that I think is worth saying is the Capitol Police were warned that there was going to be a major push at the Capitol. Their own intelligence service, which they have, the Capitol Police has an intelligence unit, sent out a warning more than a week ahead of time, saying that there was a lot of chatter. There were a lot of groups saying they were coming there. There were a lot of groups saying they were going to push and do things that should have set off alarms and did for the intelligence unit. The problem is the rest of them did nothing about it. They didn't deploy the National Guard beforehand. They didn't call for reinforcements from other local agencies. They basically said, we'll put up a few barricades and we'll be fine. Well, guess what? You failed. All right. Now, that doesn't excuse the people who broke their way in and committed violent acts, but it does show that the Capitol Police failed in their duty. And, the rest of the law enforcement agencies that were tasked with that did not do their jobs well. And we still have the case of the guy who shot Ashley Babbitt, which from every angle I've seen it from, it does not look like a righteous shooting. She was not a direct threat to anyone or a deadly threat in any way. And he actually had to step forward, shoot her, and could have retreated instead of doing that, any number of things. So, no, Mr. Capitol Police Chief, they did not come prepared for war.
Yeah. What do you think the premeditated versus incited that day argument? How do you feel about that?
I think there were people who planned. I mean, they've got proof of it now. There were some people from Oath Keepers, which is a right-wing organization, a lot of veterans and other people in there, and a lot of really good people in that organization. There were also some people who now, from all available information, seem to have planned to break in and try to do some of the insurrectionist aiming stuff more than just the protest or even rioting stuff. So I think there were some people. I'd still say it was a very small number. When you're talking about 50,000 total or however many there were, the fact that there were a couple dozen people who had severely bad intentions is concerning. It should concern people that anyone would plan to do that during a constitutionally mandated event. But the idea that Trump and even the organizers of the rally or anyone else is responsible for inciting a riot or inciting an insurrection is garbage. That's unfair. That's one of the things they're trying to do, is turn it into that, because then they can raise all the penalties and they can do things like use emergency powers to grab people's cell phone records. And I'm not particularly thrilled about that,
Yeah. What do they say, Jim? Never waste a crisis.
Never let a crisis go to waste. Yeah. That's Rahm Emanuel.
Yeah.
Who they've actually started talking about as potential ambassador to China. And I don't know, I got to be honest. I hate Rahm Emanuel. He is a horrible human being. But he's the perfect kind of jerk to deal with the Chinese. I got to say,
if you want to talk about spicy, if we want to start sending the spice around the world, I think Rahm Emanuel is a good ambassador of spice.
Ooh, I like that. And China and the spice
Yeah.
There's a lot of angles there. We can deal with that. We'll keep that one in the hopper for as it goes on. I hope they send him over there. Another thing that's been discussed, and during the hearing, Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin,
the great state of Wisconsin,
which we both come from, was during today's hearing. He introduced a piece from Mike Waller, who I know, great guy, wonderful, smart thinker, that basically was making the case for agent provocateurs from Antifa and the left as instigating a large part of the Capitol riot and the entire concept. Like I said, I like Mike. He is a smart guy. And I believe there were at least, I don't know how many, I'm not going to guess how many, but not a ton, but more than none Antifa provocateurs at the Capitol. There's at least one or two who have been widely, pointed out and who are well known.
Okay.
But the idea that the event and the thing itself was an Antifa action rather than a, Trump supporters gone wild action. No, dude, unfortunately, that was an own goal from our team.
Yep.
All right. And we got to accept that. And we got to plan to do better next time.
Yep.
If we know that that's something that can happen, and we know there are people on our side who think that way and who want to take advantage of something to do something like that, we have to be the ones who stand up and say, no, we're not going to do that. We're not at revolution stage. We're not at insurrection stage. We're not at sedition stage. We're not at any of those stages. We are one loss from having a great 4 years of a Trump presidency. And we're 2 years from potentially winning the House of Representatives and potentially the Senate back, and being able to, make sure President Kamala Harris, who should be in office by then, can't do anything overtly stupid. Okay. And I think that's worth accepting, and that's worth planning for the next time. So our team needs to really make sure we don't allow something like that to happen again.
And I think that's a good point too, that you've made in the past about, like, that's a big difference between the right and the left, is that when you see something like this happen, you come out and you say, not cool. We have no part of that. And then versus what we saw over the summer, and that being defended,
and encouraged. They were like, yeah, of course they got to get in the streets. Their voices won't be heard otherwise. And, who are we to say that they don't need a few flat screen TVs and some Chanel bags off the Magnificent Mile in Chicago? Yep. Come on. Those are legitimate protests of a peaceful nature. And there were so many leaders on the left who legitimately incited violence, who now have the bodacious hypocrisy to accuse Trump, who didn't actually incite any violence and who said peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard, of inciting an insurrection. It's absurd. I could have, I don't know where I'd put it, but I could have used a big screen, right, when Trump lost. That was a legitimate time, right? We could have gone out and done that, but no, we didn't do it. All right, our team. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, I have a really good question somebody wrote in for us that I want to ask you. Pam writes, how are the riots, fires, looting, and endless violence from last summer not called insurrections? We have only heard the term in reference to the events at the Capitol.
If that's Pam Pyre, how you doing, girl? She's one of the best. She is one of the best people I've ever met. Done tremendous charity work for Wounded Heroes of Maine. She is an outstanding human being.
Well, thank you,
Sam, and I both love her. And Pam, you know why? Because the left is hypocrites. They are, and they're cheating. They are perfectly willing to cheat and ignore the legitimate insurrection that went on for a large portion of all of last year, and then go ahead and take a one-day riot by the right and make that worse. Somehow that was worse than months of looting, burning, dozens killed, billions of dollars in damage, thousands of businesses and people's livelihoods destroyed, the entire country scared shitless. And dude, I was legitimately nervous. Now, I've got a concealed carry permit. I'm not really the likely target, when the mob's running around, but we didn't go into downtown DC.
No.
During that whole time, we 100% avoided DC, because the same mayor that right now is complaining that they didn't deploy the National Guard on January 6th refused to allow the National Guard to be deployed during the weeks and months of rioting in DC when everything was destroyed. She actually decided to join in the rioting by vandalizing a street right across from the White House with a Black Lives Matter graffiti. Pam, it is 100% grotesque and ridiculous hypocrisy, and all we can do is call it out and vote, right? Because we do get to vote. We get to go ahead and organize. We get to try and change the election rules. We get to vote again. And once we've got control, and even now in the states where we have Republican control of the legislature and governors and things like that, we need to change the rules. Why don't we decide that since this is a war for the United States, this is the second Civil War, why don't we use the correct tools for it? Which right now is not the tools of violence. It is the tools of government and grassroots organizing. Those are the things. The left's always done that. And we let it go because we're like, come on, we don't need that. Live and let live. We're Republicans. We got better things to do. We're trying to make a better life for our families. Well, guess what? They're trying to take away your ability to make that better life. They're trying to marginalize us and push us out of polite society. So what we do in response to that is we go ahead and we fight back at the game they've been beating us at, because we're better at anything than they are. We just haven't been playing this game. It's time to start.
Yeah. The big lie, Jim.
Oh boy. That's one I guess it shouldn't surprise me that the left has taken up, but they've decided to call President Trump's use of, his free speech to contest an election that he was a part of, and say that what he was doing was the big lie. Now, if you're not familiar with the term, Hitler invented the term. All right. It was put into common usage because the propagandists of the Third Reich and Adolf Hitler and Goebbels and his boys, they used the big lie, which is basically taking something to be false and repeating it enough from positions of power until people believe it or are forced to believe it or are scared to oppose it. Now, from the left's perspective, Trump had no right to say the election was stolen. He had no right to contest it. He had nothing. Number one, they believed that because their guy won. But number two, they were taking into account the fact that because Trump wasn't winning the court cases and other things, that everything he was saying was a lie, not simply a failure of his campaign team and the RNC lawyers to have contested these things before the election. So it's sickening to watch the major media and Democrats adopt an actual Hitler neologism to use against a U.S. president. I mean, I'm sorry, they're shameless, but that's disgraceful even for them.
Yeah. And I guess, Jim, if you could clarify too, because you identified a lot of these issues going into the election last year. You saw a lot of these changes going on and you wanted to get involved, and you took it to some people to try to get some momentum behind it that didn't take. And then look what happened.
A year before last year's election, myself and Samantha, who runs America Matters, outstanding organization. You should all be backing it. And we're going to get a little lively with them. America Matters is about to get spicy. That's what I'm saying. Because the battle's on and they're going to get in the fight. But we were given a bunch of information about things that had happened in California, specifically in Orange County, where the Democrats had been doing massive amounts of registering voters, or let's take that back, registering something on these lists and turning them in as if they were voters. And the reason this was suspicious and should have been followed up on was they were giving addresses at places like dog parks. There were literally in one of the Orange County dog parks had more than a dozen people registered to vote with their address being an Orange County dog park. There were Starbucks, there were public buildings, there were all kinds of places where all these people had been registered and then were going to get, a ballot or the ability to vote next time. And they also instituted ballot harvesting, meaning once the ballots go out, anyone, Democrat operatives mostly, can go around and collect ballots from, a lot of cases, these were homeless people, these were illegal aliens, and these were non-existent human beings. And their names were there, though. And so the ballots are created, the ballots are sent. And in a lot of cases, the ballots didn't go to that dog park because you can't mail something to a dog park. The ballots went to a P.O. box in Sacramento that was controlled by the wife of a Democrat Party operative. I mean, I don't know how you can show a more clear-cut case of cheating in an election than that. And the problem was we brought it to the RNC. And they let it drop more than a year before the election. Plenty of time to do that. We also told them this was going to happen other places, that, Orange County was like a lab. And what had happened in the 2018 midterms is they took a bunch of seats. And Orange County is a safely Republican district. All right. It is one of the few red, enclaves in California. Mm-hmm. But the Dems won some seats in that election And partially because of this ballot harvesting and this registering of everyone with a pulse or without one that they were doing. So we warned them. And I wrote about it. We wrote a study at Security Studies Group. We sent it around. We sent it to the Trump campaign. I guess Pascal was too busy buying himself yachts and Ferraris and things to pay attention to it. But none of those people took the actions they should have. And guess what happened? When the Rona hit, they took that game plan from Orange County, California, and they spread it nationwide. And everywhere they wanted, they did a whole bunch of things where the voting rules changed. And they basically, any kind of ballot they could find any place, regardless of its provenance, and without any kind of legitimate vetting of the people who supposedly voted, was accepted into the count. And the problem was, after that happened, Trump's lawyers are like, wait a minute, there's a bunch of bad votes. And the courts are like, the time to challenge the rules is before the election, not after you lose. Yeah. And so I'm sitting there going, you dumb bastards. We told you this was coming. Yeah. And now you're going to act like, oh my God, this is, who could have seen this coming?
Who could have seen this happening?
No, we did. So it was painful to watch. And then even more painful, when the ruckus turns into, well, then how are we going to, go ahead and delegitimize this election afterwards? Well, it was illegitimate. There were plenty of things that were not adjudicated to be false, like the media would have you believe, in calling this a big lie. What happened was the court said that you can't come in afterwards. And even though you may have a legitimate case here, you can't, just because you lost, claim that you don't like the rules. You had to challenge the rules before the election, because the rules were in place before the election. And they blew it. They totally blew it. And I hold them largely responsible for that. And we've got 2 years to fix it. We either fix it, and we can fix a lot of it. All right. I don't personally, I don't buy into the voting machine thing. People want to do that. That's fine. This is America. Yeah. You can believe what you want. I've looked at the evidence. I've looked at a lot of it. I know a lot about cybersecurity and other things, worked in that field for a while. All right. There is just no way that happened, in my opinion. All right. I don't hold it against anyone who has looked at the evidence and seen a different thing. And I'm also going to play the game a little bit and say I've probably seen some things you haven't. That's not how it happened. It was not Dominion voting machines.
No,
they beat us to the extent there was a cheating and a wide scale cheating. It was done through mail-in and absentee balloting. And that's something we can fix. So let's do that.
Yeah. Did you see Niro Tandon, the nominee for the Office of Management and Budget? She's having a hard time getting through the Senate, Jim.
She's a jerk, is why she's having She is just a rude, belligerent, obnoxious, partisan tool who, okay, and now let's be fair here. I like to mix it up online, right? I mean, it is well known. I am a totally spicy guy. I have spices people haven't even heard of. And I've been doing this for a long time. I love to get into it and scrap online. I think it's healthy. All right. I don't think, the idea that arguing online is necessarily a bad thing, which Twitter does. Twitter wants healthy conversations, is their thing, which means people don't say mean things to each other. Well, that's bullshit. I mean, I'm sorry.
From the inception of the internet, it's been mean things.
The internet was built on porn and mean things. Those are the two things that built the internet. All right. There's no question about that. Al Gore had nothing to do with it. But in the end, this idea that being mean on the internet is somehow the worst thing that can happen is garbage. All right. Now, and it's not like people on the internet don't have a choice. If you're on Twitter and you don't want to see me mocking liberals and making them cry, mute me. You can make me go away. You can block me if you're really that big a gutless weasel. But if you're, just someone who doesn't want to hear me, you mute me. And guess what? I can't interfere in your timeline. I can't do anything to you. Right. Yeah. But the problem with liberals is if they know I'm out there saying things that they hate, they can't stand that. They can't stand the idea that I have free speech to say things they hate. So they want me to shut up, which is why, things like I took a look at my Twitter account, and for the month of January 2021, I had 3.7 million impressions on Twitter.
That's it?
For the month of January 2019, had 19 million.
Oh my gosh.
All right. I didn't suddenly stop being hilarious and awesome and brilliant on Twitter. All right. I still am. All right. What happened was they have throttled my account and choked the life out of it to the point where I can only now be heard and seen by a very small group of people. They've essentially locked me in the church with the choir, right? And I can preach to the choir. And that's garbage. All right. So Niro Tandon is actually one of the angry liberals I used to argue with quite a bit. I've got some very spicy exchanges with her because she likes to mix it up.
Well, she's just a little background for everybody watching. She was the head of, or after she resigned to try to get this post, she's the head of the Center for American Progress, right? CAP. She's
left-wing issue advocacy organization.
A Clinton ally through and through. And so she was having issues even with Bernie Sanders because she was a Clinton sycophant.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And she was kind of a dirty dealer. You know what I mean? Because she ran CAP, which is a think tank, in the way that you take liberal ideas and then you just ignore all the evidence that doesn't support them and push them out. Okay. I will admit occasionally.
It's a fuel tank.
There you go. It's a fuel tank for leftist ideas. I don't always present the most unappealing case when I make an argument for something I believe in. So, but I'm honest about it. I claim, yes, Security Studies Group is a think tank and we work on information operations. We also conduct information operations to try and influence the narrative. All right. We want to change people's minds. And it's not my job to tell you all the arguments, the best arguments against what I'm arguing. It's my job to convince you that my argument's worth listening to.
Yep.
And I wholeheartedly admit that. If you want to call that propaganda, I'm not even going to call you a liar. All right. Because it is what it is. And she's the same thing on the left. They just deny it and pretend, that there are these good-hearted, charitable people who do all of this and would never.
Rainbows and sunshine, and then calling everybody names on Twitter.
Yeah, unicorns, fart, and Skittles, man. I mean, that's the game. But I mean, she's got a lot of back. She had to actually delete 1,000 tweets a couple weeks before her confirmation hearing. The problem with that is the internet never forgets,
No.
So everybody had her tweets, and when she started deleting them, that just makes you look guilty. The right thing to do would have been to say, I believe in what I believe so strongly that I argue with people to try and convince them and to try and convince the people who are watching the argument that my point is better than their point. That's what she'd do with me.
Yeah.
And we would, it was never polite, but there was substance in it. I would have points, she would have points, and we'd go back and forth, and maybe there were insults thrown in every second or third tweet because that's fun, but that doesn't mean that's a bad thing. So now she's in a position where, she's got to defend this in front of a potential.
In front of the United States Senate.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference, Jim, is I don't think that you, after all of that, would get in front of the people that you did insult as harshly as she has to these senators. Senator Rob Portman out of Ohio, held up 9 pages of tweets just for what she said to Ted Cruz. Just held up pages of, and this is what you said to Senator Cruz. So, there we go. And
did she call him the Zodiac Killer?
She's not going to make it through. I think it's comical.
Yeah.
This is what happens.
Well, and this is where we need to stand firm. All right. Because I don't like this. I'm against this. I think Niro Tandon may be a jerk, but if Biden wants her to run the OMB and he thinks she's the one to do it, and she's got the policy chops to do it.
Yeah, she does.
It's not a question of, is she qualified for the job? Yeah, she's qualified for the job, and she's a jerk. If that's a disqualifier, then you got a problem, because there's an awful lot of people in politics, I can tell you right now.
Yeah, they'll never find work again.
Right? So, and I don't believe in it. I don't believe in the cancel culture. I take that back. I believe in the cancel culture now. I want to kill it by forcing the left to play it, by killing things like Niro Tandon's confirmation, by her killing her appointment. I want them using Alinsky's rules. Alinsky's rules for radicals is the playbook for the left. Rule number 4 says force the other side to play by their own rules. They invented cancel culture. And until they stop, right? Until they stop canceling people, then we're not going to stop either. We can't. We have to force them and call them out as hypocrites when they don't, and they'll eventually get sick of killing their own. That's my hope. Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't, and maybe this is a thing that has gained a life of its own. But I think everybody's pretty much sick of it.
So
I
would
think
you
at
say,
some level,
Jim, would you say that you want to get cancel culture to a place where it's just a mutual truce?
yeah.
Yeah.
And let's just agree that substance matters more than style. Wouldn't that just be an amazing thing? Okay. And if your style is hyperbolic rhetoric online, but yet you're making good points, which, okay, that would be my definition of me.
Yeah, I think you're in that Venn diagram with her.
Well, yeah. And that's actually, I think that's fair. I
Yeah.
think, I am as hyperbolic as she was, and as rhetorical and as qualified in the areas that, are within my subject matter expertise, which is pretty much everything. And I don't think that's something that should stop the substance, and the problem is now we've gotten to the point where freedom from offense is what the left thinks they can create. They think people have a right to not be offended.
Yeah.
And so if you're offending anyone, you're wrong. And so therefore, they're going to shut you down, and you have to do what I love are the abject apologies. I am sorry that I offended someone. I had no idea that my words would create this situation, that would make this little snowflake cry and melt and all that. And, I'm kind of like, no, I don't feel bad about it. If you want to get offended and you get your feels hurt by what I said, then go away. Nobody forces you to listen to me.
Yeah.
It's voluntary. So if you're coming to where I am and voluntarily subjecting yourself to my hateful rhetoric, well, fuck you. I'm sorry. You did this to yourself. Hey, self-cancel yourself is what you need to do, self-cancel culture. Hey, there's this thing. Self-cancel culture. I just made a new. I neologized.
There you go. This program will bring a.
Oh, dude, I invent words constantly, man. It's a thing.
So tell me what you think about CPAC. I won't say canceling. So the theme of CPAC is uncanceling America, and they just platform. They canceled a man's invitation. They de-invited a man from speaking. But what do you think about that?
Okay, and here's the nice thing. I'm packing for CPAC right now, and I'm just going to go ahead and cop to the fact that both me and Samantha are packing, and I have 5 bags for a 3-day event, and she has like 2 little bags. I don't know what's wrong.
Now they have a new speaking spot.
She just piped up. She's got 1 bag. Here's what I think. I think it's that my clothes are a lot bigger, right? She wears these little silky little things. Yeah, first of all, she's tiny. And second of all, her clothes, they just roll into these little tiny things. And my clothes are gigantic.
Whatever you got to tell yourself.
Or maybe I'm a closet metrosexual or something, dude. I don't know what it is. I worry about me. I really do. But okay, CPAC.
Yeah.
In their never-ending quest by the right to try and find diversity, which, okay, I understand it. I get it. We want to broaden we want as big a tent as possible. Yeah. And we should. We should be reaching out to anyone who is sick of the left's insanity, both their economic insanity, their cultural insanity, everything they're doing right now to destroy this country. Decent people of all colors, flavors, persuasions, everything should be able to look at that and say, I just want to be left alone to live my life. I don't want some idiot bureaucrat or some 20-year-old kid with blue hair and a nose ring telling me what to think. That's not how I want to live my life. So CPAC was trying to find someone to come, and they found a rapper, a black dude, Young Pharaoh. And
Young Pharaoh.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a big rap aficionado. Probably doesn't surprise anybody. Although I used to be. I used to like Public Enemy and NWA and LL Cool J back in the day. But these days I could care less.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a long time ago. Young Pharaoh, as it turns out, is an anti-Semitic weasel. All right. And that's let's make a distinction, and I'll go ahead and toss this back to you because you were the one who brought it to me. Tell me why that CPAC going ahead and disinviting young Pharaoh when they found this out. First of all, who didn't check his freaking Twitter feed, you idiots?
Who doesn't?
Come on. I mean, that's the first thing you do is, okay, we're going to have a rapper come to CPAC where all the very touchy conservatives may be, but we're not going to check his Twitter feed? Come on. Yeah. All right. So, but when they found out that he was an anti-Semitic weasel, the correct thing to do was disinvite him.
Yes.
But why is that different from cancel culture?
Well, I think, we've talked about this. I think that there's a distinction between bigotry and offensive language, if you want to call it that. And there's no place for bigotry for any platform that we're a part of or any part of the movement, right? There's no place for that. And the difference is between canceling what CPAC isn't in the traditional sense canceling this guy is because you shouldn't give that a platform. But canceling in the normal sense of, I just don't agree with your ideas on the size and scope of the federal government, so I'm going to take you off of the platforms, that's canceling. And that's where I would draw the line, is what's true bigotry and terrible things to believe and espouse, and then what is we differ on policy and the culture of America and what it should be.
We need to fight for that distinction. Because right now they're blurring that line. And that's what the left is doing, is they're going ahead and saying anything we dislike that offends us is hate speech.
Yep.
Well, no, it's not. It's literally not. And what we're going to do, but what they're doing is attempting to change the definition. Mm-hmm. So we need to stand up and say pretty much what you just did, that if it is actual bigoted speech where you are attacking a group for their innate characteristics or other things like that. There's a very well-defined, case law about what that is as regards anti-Semitism, as regards, actual homophobia, as regards actual transphobia. What the left's trying to do now is take someone who, like me right now, says, I don't believe that saying you're a woman as a man makes you a woman biologically. All right. Yeah. That's a factual statement. I think I could stand on that as scientific fact, that you don't become a woman biologically by changing your gender identity. But the left wants to make that hate speech, and they want to use things like that to cancel people. And so the difference and the distinction is, if you say that Jews are lying thieves, which is one of the things young Pharaoh said, all right, you're a bigot. Yes. If you say that biological sex and gender identity are not the same thing, which scientists say, you're not a bigot. Mm-hmm. But if you said trans people are freaky and weird and I don't want them around me, that's bigotry. Yes. All right. I don't say that. I got no problem with trans people being where they want to be. When we start saying they have become biologically what they are, then we got a problem. And there's an entire array of distinctions that we're going to have to fight for, because they're trying to make them the same thing. They want to make the hate speech tent as large as possible and essentially criminalize conservatism, and all the beliefs of conservatism and religion will then become hate speech that they can control and that they can marginalize. And they'll start in the private sector, but the Biden administration is already working on plenty of ways that they want to create speech codes and thought codes and action codes and pass laws and get them. And we're going to end up fighting the Supreme Court, and hopefully that'll at least be an area where we can get some love. But we need to, as people of the right and anyone from the left who's listening, which if you're here, good on you, listen to what we're saying. And if you've got a better argument, bring it on, bring it on. I have never shied away from an intellectual argument, and I will always let the other side get their point across, and then I will disconcur, which is another word of my words. I made that one. So anyhow, this was fun. I think we got some good juice going. Just a kind of a programming note. Like I said, we're heading to CPAC tomorrow. Samantha and I are. We're driving down. We're gonna go see some friends at Bragg, which is awesome. Her platoon sergeant from Desert Storm, where
Nice.
she was a paratrooper, one of the first birds into Desert Storm before it was Desert anything. They were there. So we're gonna go see her old platoon sergeant from there. Have some brisket he's gonna smoke up for us.
Ooh.
Living large. And then I don't know what'll happen while I'm down at CPAC. You know, I will have, I think, the ability to maybe do one off of these. So maybe on Facebook, maybe on Twitter, or maybe on YouTube, and I'll put it out to the other two. So we'll see. We'll do something live from down in Florida. And a lot of my buddies are down there. So there'll be some lively souls to potentially sit down with. So
Nice.
Thanks for anybody who's listening. We'll be back though legit next week. Sometime, it may not be Monday, but Monday or Tuesday, we'll let you know. And then we're going to, like I said, we're still going to work on trying to get some other people on and broaden the chat experience. Thanks to Pam for a good question and everything else. And have a lobster, you mean? All right. Middlebrook, you got anything?
No, just thanks for everybody being here and engaging with us. It's, we're starting this off. It's been pretty fun. Thanks for having me on the show, Jim.
Dude, you do a good job. Right on.
Thanks.
All right. We're out. We're heading south, and we'll let you know when we get to Florida.